All right. We all set? Okay. Welcome to today's webinar, Your Brand, Your Power. I'm Susan Waldman, Senior Manager of Membership and Publications at NAMIC. Today's program is being live streamed on NAMIC's YouTube channel. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and please use the chat to communicate with one another. We're going to start with a video introducing our speakers, and then we'll get on with the program.
And now let's meet our speakers. Simone Knight is a proven innovator with a personal brand for getting things done and motivating others to peak performance. She has over 20 years of leadership expertise in the areas of marketing strategy, branding, digital transformation, and Lean Six Sigma process improvement. She's a charismatic change agent who is focused on innovation and the future of marketing. As a born storyteller, Simone uses her mix of creative, analytical, and leadership skills to inspire breakthrough performance in others. She drives innovation wherever she goes, and her style blends her bold nature with an approachable sense of confidence. She quickly identifies opportunities for organizations and their talent to make cultural, mental, and organizational leaps that transform perceptions around what's possible. Over her career, Simone has been an engineer, management consultant, and senior executive who has been at the helm during major transitions in leadership and international product launches. As a result, she's become a renowned leader for change management, innovation, and professional growth. Simone is a NAMIC ELDP Class XIX alumna. Russ is the Senior Vice President and Head of HR for Warner Brothers Discovery News and Sports Divisions. She has oversight for the execution of talent strategy globally for all platforms, including CNN US, CNN International, CNN en Español, CNN Digital, WBD Sports, and Bleacher Report. She draws upon her 25 years of experience in HR and partnership with executives to deliver against strategic initiatives by maximizing the contributions of its greatest resources, its people. Prior to joining CNN, Ellen was employed by a boutique consulting firm in the Washington, D.C. metro area, partnering with business leaders in an array of industries, from nonprofits to high-tech firms. She began her career in the financial services industry, holding leadership roles as a retail banker before transitioning to the HR field. Ellen earned her undergraduate degree from the University of Virginia with a major in sociology and a minor in political science. She earned a master's degree in organizational learning from George Mason University. She is certified as a senior professional in human resources. She has held board positions in civic organizations and currently sits on the board of C2HR. She's a NAMIC ELDP Class XIX alumna. PJ Jayawardene is an accomplished technologist, advisor, and leader with an impressive track record leading the architect, development, and launch of innovative products and market-leading solutions across the globe. PJ continues his successful journey in transforming organizations and identifying untapped opportunities to drive market expansion at scale and capturing revenue growth. PJ is the author of over a dozen patents in communication systems and has garnered wireless industry recognition in boosting competitive market positioning, serving as a subject matter expert, providing leadership to cross-functional teams, capitalizing on emerging trends, and enabling market share growth in competitive landscapes. He is a NAMIC ELDP Class XX alumnus. And our moderator for today is Anne-Marie Burton, Chief of Strategy and Programs for NAMIC. Ms. Burton's portfolio includes developing, executing, and sustaining NAMIC's strategic initiatives, including education programs, chapter and member relations, meetings and conferences, and fundraising support. Ms. Burton has over 15 years of experience across several leadership and management positions in the nonprofit sector. She has a proven track record of leading effective teams, developing and implementing revenue growth strategies, and delivering results. She is a NAMIC ELDP Class XX alumna.
All right, Anne-Marie, I'll let it to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. You're in for a treat. That was an amazing introduction. Well done, Susan. We have an amazing group of individuals who will be sharing their knowledge and their nuggets with you. So to get started, let's look at what we have in store for you today. First, this is a highly interactive session. We have a number of polls, so please be ready to engage with us as we ask you questions. I already see the thank you. You're using your emojis. I was just about to say that. Give them a thumbs up. Let them know, we are paying attention to everything, but this is really about you. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A section of this page. Thank you. Wow, so much love, everybody. Please use the Q&A part of this, and we'll be able to get to your question. This is being recorded, so you really don't have to take notes, but I would love for you to make sure that you have your phone in case you want to be able to take a picture of something, or as you're responding to the poll, we'll need you to enter in your information. So please just get ready, have your tech ready. If you're driving, we want you to be safe. Enter all your questions in the Q&A feature. That's the only way I'm going to be able to see them as your moderator, because as you know, the chat is always going as you guys recap some of the conversations that we're having. So what do we have in store for you today? We will be talking about your personal brand. We'll be talking about why is a personal brand important? How do you create an effective personal brand? And we're going to do this in 4 stages. So the first stage is phase 1 will be laying the foundation. We'll be discussing how you define your goals. Then we'll talk about marketing and awareness, defining your focus, which is going to be phase 2. Then we go to phase 3, where we talk about building the brand. This is where we talk about your content curation and what you post and where you post it. And then we go to phase 4, where we talk about marketing operation and setup operations. So as you can see, it's really a full class, but we're excited that you're here with us and learning with us. So let's get rolling. Susan, next slide. I'm really excited. So let's tee this off. Let's talk about your personal brand. Why is a personal, what is the most important aspect of creating a personal brand that is both authentic and engaging? Why are we having this conversation today? Simone, why don't you tee us off?
Thank you, Anne-Marie. This is so great. I'm so happy to be here with everyone. And, this is a topic that's really been near and dear to my heart for many years, personal brand development. And for me, a personal brand is super important because you want to highlight the thing that makes you you. What's your secret sauce? And really, if you are looking to grow your career, grow a business, because I know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs on this webinar as well. If you are looking to really amplify who you are and bring a message to the world, to your area of expertise, you want to make sure that you have a strong brand persona. So what does that really mean? You want to think about your strength, right? What is your secret sauce? What makes you you? Is it your ability to coach? Is it your ability to create innovation? Is it your leadership style, your strategy development? How do you provide value to the world? And as you do that, you want to be authentic in how you deliver that message and provide that value. And then you want to amplify that in terms of how you create content and how you show up to everyone and provide that service and deliver on your personal brand promise. So for me, it's imperative, depending on how you want to grow and where you want your career or your personal lifestyle to end up in the world, you want to develop that personal brand strategy.
Thank you. Great segue to our next question. Let's figure out how we do that. So Ellen, how has your personal brand evolved, and how has that helped your professional journey?
Again, like Simone, I am beyond thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for this. A little inside talk here. When I first joined, I was like, long day, lots of meetings, energy level was low, but my goodness, the music got me psyched and I'm pumped. So I'm so glad to be here. But in terms of how my personal brand has shifted over the years, I really do think it's a matter of confidence in terms of who I am. Simone used the word authentic, and I think that is key, being authentic. When I first began my career, I saw myself somewhat of a chameleon. I would make adjustments to how I showed up depending on who was in the room. It was actually through a mentor who told me, Ellen, you don't need to be like me. I need you to be you. There's enough of me. We need you. So that helped me to understand that, look, I do have value. What is my value? What is my worth? When I join a conversation, when I'm in a meeting, when I'm interacting with others, what value am I adding? What value am I bringing? So for me, going back to the question, how has my brand transitioned? It's going from being a chameleon, all things to everybody, to being uniquely me, knowing what I contribute and what value I add.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. That is just so powerful. I've heard of this saying that says be you because everybody else is taken. So you saying that, it literally accents that for me. Thank you. That because we all come with that added sauce that makes us who we are, and we contribute to any environment and culture that we're coming into. So Ellen, I love that. PJ, same question to you. How has your personal brand evolved and helped your journey?
It's first off, thank everybody. I'm pumped to be here. I love these naming discussions. Even our prep meetings are so much fun. So it's like, going back home. When I look at the personal brand, I also look at it from multiple dimensions. You look at how companies have evolved. You look at Netflix, for example. They started off selling DVDs, and now they're a streaming service that has 232 million people. And over the time, they've had to rebrand themselves. It's a journey that takes you on of identifying what is my core product. And then even if you were to stay stagnant in an organization, there's a great article on Forbes of even if you stay stagnant, you always have aspirational goals of the next step. You're happy in your current role, but moving on to your next role, there are things that you want to look for. So you need to have your brand ready. For me, over the time, over a 20-year career, it has been, you always end up working on doing your main primary goal, your primary task, what your job is mandating that you do, because that's your primary goal. But the aspirational parts of your journey is what helps you define your brand, to help you get to the next step, either move on to the next green pasture. But the biggest thing for me, the importance of creating a personal brand, which we will talk about it further down the track, is it becomes less exhaustive being at work and being with people. When you have to, be somebody else, when you have to create a separate image, it's exhausting. By the time you go home, you want to curl up in the fetal position. But an authentic brand, which resonates with your core values, has helped me be less exhaustive at work, in my engagements with my peers, with the industry, and life becomes significantly easy. So I think my wife would say that I'm a much better person as a result of that.
That's awesome. Be you, be uniquely you. I love it. Authentic you. Simone, how about you? Tell us about your journey and your brand.
Well, it's interesting for me because, now I'm a senior marketing executive in media and brand strategy, and my focus is on storytelling and, mixing marketing, creative, data analytics. Why is that? I started my career as an engineer. So that sort of colors the way that I see the world. But that also has evolved over time to now I'm leading this, leading marketing organizations. So what does that really mean? I look at how I have become more focused on the journey and more intentional about how I want my brand to be positioned. So in addition to that, instead of really just focusing more on the professional side of who I am, engineer, marketer, so forth, I've also given more space to mix my personal expertise with my personal passion. And I realized that my personal passion over time has always remained the same. It's always been about transformation and growth, personal and corporate. So that is who my brand is now. So I've evolved it from more focused on the technical and the professional aspect to now providing space for both of those things. And that is really the authenticness that I bring to the conversation. And that is how I show up in all spaces, whether that is at home or whether that is at work. Much to my husband's chagrin, as PJ mentioned, his family, he would probably hope that I show up less of that. Right? When there's a project at home, I'm always like, okay, so what's the timeline? But that's who I am, 24 hours a day.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, we are who we are, home and work. We are the same person. And I always feel as though, in a way, during COVID, we were allowed to kind of bring that whole self with you because you had your family, you were in your space. And I think that allowed us to kind of maybe let up a little bit and allow people into our homes and into our spaces. So
I don't know, Anne Marie, because I'll tell you, on more than one occasion, my husband has said to me, oh no, you're not at work anymore. Turn it off.
I like that. Boundaries. I like that. Boundary setting. So to everybody joining us right now, we have a quick poll for you. So we would love you to tell us a little bit about your brand. So how have you been creating or reposting content relevant to your personal brand on social media? Tell us. We just put, you can either scan the QR code that's on the screen right now or respond to the text that we just put in the chat feature, and we'll give you about a minute to let us know how you are doing that, and I'll share the results with all of you so you can see what you're telling us. So we would love to hear from you. Again, have you been creating or reposting content, you know, that's relevant to your personal brand on social? We want to hear about it.
So we can continue and then we can come back to that response, right?
Actually, I'm getting a lot of 15 answers real quick. I'm about to share this. Give me 1 second so we can all see how you are. Thank you guys. You guys are very responsive. Let's see, it's coming in. I love the, oh my God, I haven't. Take a look at that. Look at that. Yes, very good. Someone's very intentional about it. Love it. Love it. Let's see. Yeah, people are using LinkedIn. I love that. Yeah, I see some people want to do more. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate that. We have two more polls to go, so get ready. We really want to make this as interactive as possible. I love the focusing on staying positive. That's really, really key. Curious to know how our panel is going to discuss that, especially in brand creation and looking at your personal brand. I like that post on mental health. I think that is really key. And I see a lot of people coming to that.
Where people are combining their personal side, right?
Yeah.
Not just who they are professionally in terms of the content that they're posting. I mean, when I think about who the master of that is, I think of Oprah, to be honest. She built an entire media empire on authenticity and vulnerability, and was able to blend her, you know, that journalism side with the things that she was most passionate about. So there's definitely something there that people love and admire and are drawn to.
Absolutely. All right. Very good. And there's one that I really want to touch on that I think we'll discuss this as we go along, but there's somebody who said it's stuck in my head. You know, how do I get it out? Where do I find the content? I think many people will grapple with that, right? Because you don't see yourself as an influencer or as a brand. And so hopefully we can touch on that, especially as I jump into this our next question, which and again, let me see, how can someone really with relatively small media, with a small media following, still create a strong personal brand, right? So again, touching on this question of it's in my head, where do I get the content? And then you have somebody who has a small footprint, right? And how can they go about creating that strong personal brand? I guess, PJ, do you want to kick us off on that one?
Absolutely. I think the hardest part, and another question that I saw, a comment that I saw in there is having that differentiated behaviors or the outlook on your work environment or on LinkedIn versus your personal view. And it's not the easiest realm to grapple. But when you have a limited social media presence, case in point, myself. The efforts that you put into in that realm have to be targeted. And that's where I found, for myself, it was somewhat of an alien behavior to be posting comments and thoughts on it, because it's not really in my DNA. However, what you do is, if you do post something, if you were to, and I was really refreshed to see that somebody made a comment saying, it's my likes and things that I repost are a reflection of my personal brand. And that's a really good way, because if you are stuck in identifying the content that you want to create, looking for inspiration and things that resonate with you always tend to help. And that's one start. And then being clinical in how you post things, what you post in that social media environment. One of the areas that we looked at is working on your personal brand. If you only have one piece of it, let's say LinkedIn, I think it's worthwhile to invest, take the time to look at, how am I perceived on LinkedIn and outside? And that is an investment in yourself. And Simone, I believe you'll be talking about that down the track. So it's a concerted effort that you've got to make in the smaller realm that you're going to be operating in.
Oh, I like that. Simone, do you want to add to that?
Sure. I like what PJ was saying about, posting things that resonate with who you are as a person, because that is definitely reflective of your brand. And if you're not sure where to start, I would say that is the place to start. If you're already on LinkedIn and you are following certain content creators, certain companies, and they are posting information that you like, maybe you're following TED, or maybe you're following, not only, like I said, the company that you work for, or somebody else who you find just creates content that resonates with you. You can start simply by just reposting the things that they are posting and adding your content on top of it, adding your comment on top of it. Why are you reposting it? What do you find interesting about it? Or how does this impact your industry or your community? And that is the first place that you can start, because really what you're doing is you're sharing your opinion, and you're resharing that message to the people who are connected to you via your network. So those are simple places to start. Other than that, you can start to then create your own content from scratch. Think of it as your own personal blog that you are putting on LinkedIn. You can start with something that's just short of, maybe a small paragraph, and then over time you can expand. LinkedIn now has capabilities for where you can be a content creator. You can actually author articles via LinkedIn as well, and that would be more longer form content, maybe about 500 to 700 words or so on a particular topic that you like and you want to go deeper into it. And if that's the area that you want to grow your brand, you can certainly continue to do that with the articles. But the first place to start is to repost the things that resonate with you, and be very intentional about that. Because everything that you post, regardless of the platform, reveals something about you. Whether that is something about your children, at a game, that sports that they're involved in, or whether it's something about, the latest evolution of space flight. So everything you post reflects on you. So you have to ask yourself, 5 years from now, if someone sees this post, will it be detrimental to who I am as a brand? Ask yourself every time you post, because the internet never forgets.
So looking through the lens of, someone who's been in HR for some time, I have to underscore that one. That information lives, and it will inform some decisions. So being thoughtful about that. But just a couple of the points I wanted to add in terms of your footprint. And the report out, someone said they were intentional. Everything that they post, they're intentional. And that one resonated for me, just because I see that, and I'm not hopefully coming across as judgmental, but, people who comment on every post and often not adding anything to it, but really just repeating what's there. The other is platform appropriate. There are things, LinkedIn is supposed to be a platform for professionals. And there are some things that posts that I see on there and I think, I don't know that I would necessarily consider that to be in the professional realm. And certainly if you're thinking about your brand and knowing the type of audience that LinkedIn draws, we might want to just be considerate about what we're posting on LinkedIn versus, I don't know if you use Instagram or Facebook, for instance. And then the last would be consistent. Individuals that I may know personally and I know professionally, and it's incongruent. This person I'm seeing here is not the same person I'm seeing over there.
Oh, I like that. Ellen, you really touched on a very key point, which is around knowing you, and I see the recap there, knowing the appropriate space and what to post on that space, but really making sure that you're creating this balanced person. I'm hoping that the person I see on LinkedIn is not the mirror opposite of somebody that I may see on Twitter or what have you, right? So I think being mindful of that is so key. And we do know that, as you rightly said, everything on the internet lives on. What is interesting for me from a multi-generational conversation, right, is how maybe the younger generation is using the same spaces very differently from the way maybe some of us who are more seasoned, I don't want to use any generational stuff in this conversation, but are looking at social media. And when we think about authenticity, we're thinking about bringing that best self and putting it out there. But there are others that may take that a step, perhaps to me, too far, right? And sometimes I see LinkedIn, depending on the people I've engaged with, where it's an album. It's every picture that's everywhere. I'm on a golf course, I'm eating dinner, I'm doing this. To me, that's a bit of noise, and as you rightly said, does not enhance your professional persona. But I think different generations are using that differently. What would any of you say to that? And what would be the best advice for them? I think you've recapped it very well, but could there be a generational difference in how we are perceiving personal brand and these social spaces?
I'll jump in here for a second. Absolutely, there is definitely a generational gap there. And part of it is because, generation like, Z or X or even some millennials, depending on where they fit in that spectrum, that 10-year gap, they don't know what privacy is, right? So it's just everything. I'm just going to share everything. And that does not serve you well. And going back to echoing what Ellen said, the platform is definitely important. There's a reason why in brand strategies, companies focus on specific platforms and post different content on different platforms, right? So take a cue from that. Yes, LinkedIn is a professional platform. You post your stuff there that pertain to who you want to be seen professionally. If this is personal, then you can do something on Facebook or Instagram. Depending on the business you're in, if you're more image focused, Instagram is great for that. TikTok also, if you're looking at more younger generation. If you think about this, Facebook is more about look at this. Instagram is more about look at me. So it depends on the kind of content that you're looking to post. Now, having said that, I'm actually will be featured as a panelist at an event towards the end of the month from the ANA about privacy, data privacy, because this is now a situation where it's our own information from our phones, from our TVs, from the variety of places that our private information is out there. But think about all of the information that people willingly give up, and think about what is appropriate to be sharing in any particular platform. So the different generations, more of our older generations, we grew up with privacy, and I'm including myself in that. We grew up with privacy, so we share a lot less information in most cases. But think about that when it comes to how you post content as well, and be content appropriate, be platform appropriate. And again, I'm going to go back to the words being very intentional, because that is important. Think about what brands do and how they post their content, where they post it. Focus on a particular area so you don't spread yourself too thin. Maybe one or two platforms, maybe you have one professional and one social, and that's it. And the last thing I'm going to say on this is lock down your account. Your account does not have to be public. Remember that. You can have an account where all of your posts just go to your close friends, to your family members. You don't have to friend everybody. You don't have to accept all the friend requests. You don't have to. So just think about how, and LinkedIn allows you to determine who gets what post, what group, what channel that you belong to. Is it open to the public or not? So think about that when it comes to privacy and how you share your information.
Thank you. Thank you. Really good. Let's see. Ellen, I just want to tap into that HR space by asking this question in terms of how can one balance a personal brand with a corporate brand, especially when they work for a really well-known company?
You know, I think it starts from the beginning in terms of identifying what company you want to attach yourself with. Because first you want to make sure that the company's values and your values are aligned. Because if that's not the case, the way that you show up is not going to mesh with the corporate brand. So I think first ensuring that there is a match in terms of, so if you're mission minded, the organization that you're considering being employed with is not, then that's a problem. The other, I think, is ensuring that the company values what you are bringing to the table. We talked about personal brand is all about your value, what value you can add. I can't tell you how many times I've had employees sit in my office and express concerns that I'm not valued or I'm not appreciated. And we can talk about that, but there comes a point where if that is the consistent theme, if that's how you're feeling, then I would say you owe it to yourself to find an organization that does value what you have to add. And then the other point that I would just make while we're on this conversation is going back to consistency in terms of who you are. Most organizations will do talent assessments or succession planning. You're sitting in a room with leaders. They're going through profiles of their team, but others may know individuals and might have some input. And it's always interesting to me that one person may characterize someone as this, someone else will have a totally different experience and perspective. And you just wonder, how can things be so different? How can perceptions be so different? So just being cognizant of how you show up and being consistent in how you show up. And I think part of that maybe goes back to where I started when we began, which was how has my brand transitioned? And that is not being a chameleon. Not showing up this way to this group and this way to this group, knowing your value, knowing where you can add to and contributing that. And then the last thing that I would say, and it's something that I say to my team all the time, have impact. If you attend, many of them will attend the same meeting on a weekly basis, monthly basis. If you attend that same meeting and you never have anything to contribute, you're taking up space. You have an opportunity to have impact. If it's not a question, you don't have to be an expert on everything. It could be a question. It could just be a thought. But if you're not showing up, you're taking up space.
Oh, I really like that. I'm gonna kind of go through rapid fire questions here with our panelists because the questions are really coming in from the audience. And so let's see, Ben, really good questions. The first one is, once you have found your personal brand, what are some of the tips on making sure that you stay true to that brand? That's a really good question. And I think we're about to get into that when we talk about tips. So Ben, just hold on to that. I want to acknowledge that we got that question. But one that really touches on exactly what Ellen was talking about was, Will just wrote to me and said, aligning company values with personal ones are key, but how practical is that for someone who has not established a niche for themselves in an industry? Who wants to take that?
I can talk about that for a bit because it always is, and that's where the journey part comes from. Speaking from personal experience, Establishing a niche in the industry itself, that itself is it sometimes can be an insurmountable challenge. And also the question is, do you really need to make yourself absolutely unique, or that, to go out of your way to craft a complete unique identity for yourself, or find a part that a passion in the work that you do that resonates with yourself. I found that over time that, working in a technology space for so many years, being perceived as a technical person, as a technical guy, versus transitioning to being a leader was something that I found that being a leader was what was actually that resonated better with me. And then what my journey was is to start looking at leadership positions in every organization that I moved to, every project when I was working around the world, was to organically transition myself to taking charge of situations. And the funny thing was, these are things that I was doing when I was about 9, 11 years old, back in school, because, I did have a mini gang of guys that we would just go around and then, just do things that were not very polite to talk about, but, being kid stuff. But it was a form of leadership. But it was always about being in charge of a situation. So in an organization, there are always things that if you look out deeper and wider, you could always find things that help resonate with what you can bring. And that is always about resonating with your passion. It's all about resonating with what makes you feel fulfilled when you leave. And at that point, it all comes down to your investment. Start talking to people. Start talking to different groups of organizations, different verticals. Don't be boxed in as an engineer. Don't be boxed in as a technician, as a marketing person. I would spread out that way. And then you would find that there are parts of an organization that recognizes what you bring. And that is how you could get to that resonant frequency of things aligning with your passion, your niche at that point, and how it aligns with the company's goals. Hope that makes sense.
Fantastic. I love that. And I love the recap that Amy just put in the chat. Let's take another question. Ben says, with the rise, and I think, Simone, I'm going to have you answer this one because it's around privacy. With the rise in AI, what are some of the ways we can protect our personal brand?
That is a question that the industries, plural, are currently grappling with right now. There are just some recent examples of deep fakes with fake Drake. Drake released a song that he did not actually release. So it's going to be interesting to see how regulations evolve in this space. But if you're an artist, there is now, and I said music as well as, graphic artists, there is now software being developed out of, universities, research centers that are basically giving authenticity stamps to something, or being able to have your work opted out of this co-opting that can be done through a lot of the AIs, especially when you look at some of the AI art, like from Midjourney or DALL-E, or I forgot the other Fusion. That what they do is that basically they take all of the available data online and they use it to train the model. And then when you go and you give a prompt and you say, hey, I want an artwork that does this or look like that, it references from all of these different points. So the question is that really your artwork? If it looks like somebody else's, who owns that? But you're now going to be able to have your stuff opt out of that so that it doesn't get referenced in training the model. Those things are still being developed. We are writing this history as we are living it, because the technology is ahead of us and is growing very, very rapidly. At this point, how you can protect your personal brand is when you're posting something, when you're out there talking, be out there, right? You're not just hearing our audio here talking, right? You're seeing our faces. We are interacting with you. And it is difficult to fake you and your personality. And that is part of the way that you can, at least minimize the fact that someone else is going to basically steal your content. There's got to be a voice to you. What is your brand voice? How do you show up in the world? How do you sound? How much personality do you have? Because I think there are probably some writers throughout history that if you read their works, you automatically know who that is. If it's a song that you're listening, you automatically know who that is because you know how that person sounds. So you want to be associated with that. You want to develop your brand to that point that you know how, that people know how you sound and how you look and how you show up in the world. And that makes it harder to fake you and to take your intellectual property for themselves. I'll just share one story. Years ago when I was very early in my career and I was working on a project with someone else, we're working on the slides and then there was a big presentation to the leadership team and I developed the slides and I developed a certain way of my slides. There was a look to how I did things. But in another conversation, they basically tried to pass the work off as their own. But the person said, isn't it Simone's slides? Because I can see this, and this, right? So without even realizing it, I had branded my work. I had a certain look to how I do things. And you can do that for yourself even now, regardless of what stage you are in your career.
Fantastic. So let's go to our audience. Everybody, we have a quick question for you. We have another poll question for you. I love this conversation. Keep the questions coming. So the question we have for you is, do you feel you need to refresh your personal brand? So again, give us the answers in the poll. It's in the chat, or you can just take a screenshot. Let us know, do you feel you need to refresh your personal brand?
While they're answering that, Anne-Marie, I would love to actually share the imagery, talk about this imagery behind the slide here, because I think it's important to the question.
Yes, go ahead.
So the reason why there's a slice of pie on the screen is because part of the 3 key elements to developing your personal brand has the acronym of PIE, P-I-E, performance, image, and exposure. I'm sure many of you may know that person who's toiling away in the basement, pumping out data, content, doing everything, but no one really knows who they are. No one knows their name. When they're not at the big table when the conversation is being had about, key projects that have high visibility. Maybe you are that person, right? So, give me a hand clap in the with the emojis if you know someone like that who is doing all of the performance, but not getting any of the exposure, right? So they have the P, but no E in the pie, right? And then you have someone who has that presidential image, right? They're walking around like a peacock. Everybody knows what they look like, who they are, and they've got the fancy outfit on and they're hobnobbing with all the leadership, but no one really knows what they do, right? So it's like they don't have the performance piece of it. Give me another hand clap if you know anybody like that you've seen throughout your career. They've got all of the image, but they don't have the performance. You want to blend all 3 of those things together. And those are 3 key elements. They are symbiotic, right? They are interlaced to have the performance, image, and the exposure. If you have any of them without the other 2, you have limited growth capacity. You're really limiting yourself in terms of how far you can go. If you are doing excellent work that is really aligned with the business and the strategy and the goals, let me say that again, aligned with the business strategy and goals, right? Make that clear connection. And you have this image which aligns with the values of that organization. Some organizations are very, simple in the way that they show up, and some are very fancy. You've got to blend the 2, as Ellen mentioned before. How do those values connect, right? How do you fit into that? And then you have to have that exposure, the visibility. If there's a big presentation, you want to be there to present, or at least in the room. If they're still looking for someone to volunteer to work on a project that is still being figured out, volunteer for that, because you have amazing exposure probably to leadership people that you may not have otherwise get exposed to. And that doesn't just mean work projects. It could be a project for a community outreach. It could be planning an event. It could be something that aligns with the nonprofit that your company works with for their ERG philosophy and values. So you want to volunteer because that is also some amazing exposure that you might not otherwise get. And all of these 3 things work together, so you get your slice of the pie.
Simone, I love that. And if I could just add performance, that P in pie, I say to employees, that's the price of admission. Employees, when they're lamenting, I'm not getting promoted, I'm not getting opportunities, I'm a great performer. Yes, that's the price of admission. And then there's some other things that you need to do, such as making sure that you're visible, right? That image, and that's referred to in I. And then the other is exposure, the networking. There are some things that you can do, but my goodness, it's powerful when you have sponsors, someone who can help to give you that exposure, someone who can put your name forward, someone who can speak for you when you're not in that room, someone who can say, oh yeah, I know Simone, she would be great at this. Or I know PJ, I saw him do that last week, he could do it this week, right? So ensuring that you're networking, that you actually have sponsors, someone who can actually help you to promote your image, to promote your brand within the organization.
If one little piece of nugget information I'd like to add to that is, one executive that I was talking to recently said, you need to have a really good ground game where you need to make sure, let's say you're going for another role, a promotion or something like that, even outside of your company, you need to network with the folk who can influence that decision. All it takes is a quick check. Ellen, your example is perfect. Hey, what do you think about Ellen? What's worse, what's a little bit better, but equally damning if the response is, and that's bad. If somebody does not want to say anything bad about you, you need everybody to recognize your strengths and the power of your brand, what's unique that you bring to the table. And you need people nodding their heads all the way around. And that is where your ground game comes into play. So spot on with the exposure, always need to work on that part so people know the power of what you bring.
And I'm going to also shout out Brittany, who mentioned, and also capture that volunteer experience on your LinkedIn profile. Yes. Documented. You don't want to do it in the dark, right? You want to make sure that other people see that, so you can have the exposure for that work that you've done.
All right, so I want to be sensitive of time because we're having a really good conversation here, but we have about 8 minutes, and I wanted us to do a quick recap. So let me see. Simone, would you kind of walk us through the 4 phases we've been talking about? We are capturing some of the highlights, and then I'm going to take some of the 2 questions that we have.
Sure. So as we started off the webinar, we talked about building your brand in 4 phases. So these are the 4 phases: laying the foundation so that you define who you are, what you're delivering, what your secret sauce is. The second phase is building up that brand, right? What is your brand voice? What do you look like? How do you show up in the world? That could be your personal color palette. I have a personal color palette. I know that there are probably some people on this webinar that knows me, that knows what that is. So you want to be clear on the benefit and the value that you provide, and you want to be able to develop even the brand statement. My personal brand statement is creating greatness. That's what I do. I create greatness in myself and in others and in the organizations that I belong to, whether personal, professional, or even spiritual. So what is that mantra that you live by? Because if you are intentional about that, you're going to go out into the world with that on your mind, with that in your spirit. So what is your personal brand statement? And if you're not sure about what your style is and how you show up in the world, get help. You can find lots of stylists. You go on Instagram. I'm sure you can find a great stylist from Instagram, or even get inspiration at minimum about how people look and how they're carrying themselves, until you figure out what your key style is. The third phase is about marketing awareness. Again, we talked about creating content, articles on LinkedIn, a blog, social media posts, adding value to things that maybe you repost. You want to identify what platforms work best for you. As I said before, Facebook is about look at this. Instagram is about look at me. LinkedIn is about look at that. I would say LinkedIn and Twitter is about look at that. Let's look at this other thing that you are interested in, or maybe changing the world in some way. Twitter is where people go to have conversations. discourse, political debate, other things. So figure out what platform works best for you. The last in the 4 phases is operations, right? Again, this is me being an engineer coming back to it. How are we going to replicate this thing? What are we going to do to keep this machine running? So developing a content calendar is great. For maybe you want to post something or create articles or something like that once a week, once a month. Figure out what works for you on the weekends, maybe on just certain key dates. You want to leverage creative tools. I have a few here at the bottom. Canva is great. It's a creative tool. Hootsuite, which is great for putting out several social media posts in many places rather than having to do it manually. Fiverr is great if you want to hire staff to help you with content creation, production, editing, all of that, if you're going to be doing videos and so forth. And then Envato has a host of tools that you can do for graphics and downloads. It's similar to Canva, but there's also a capability to hire people from Envato to help you with building out a website, for instance, if that's what you want to do. So these would be the 4 phases that in general that I would say would be very key for how you want to build out the brand. And you start with the foundation, figure out how your brand is going to show up in the world, and then you market it, and then you put in that process in place that's going to keep you putting out the information on the frequency that you think is going to be relevant to your audience.
Thank you. Rapid fire is going really well. I just want to acknowledge M. Jackson that I just got your questions, and we just provided you with some toolkits in the chat. So please take a look at that, as well as some of the brands that Simone just highlighted at the very bottom of this slide. That's a really good place to start, and to get individuals that can also help you with your content if you need that. So just want to acknowledge that we've touched on that. Susan, next slide, please. All right, let's do a quick recap. Ellen, if I could have you and PJ kind of talk about this as we recap some of the conversation.
Absolutely. Ellen, do you want to go first? I'll go right after you.
Go ahead, PJ.
So one of the first things of a successful brand is identifying, and if you look at the different elements, what makes you different is the brand promise. It comes down to, we talked about the Johari window and then the 360 feedback, is if you can get to a point where feedback from others as well as your own assessment are all spot on, that there are no deviations, there are no blind spots, that is when you know your perception of yourself and how others see you are in sync. And that makes what I've learned, and through talking to multiple people, is that makes your brand very unique. It's a signature. You've automatically developed an easy to maintain brand, and that helps you stand out. Ellen, do you want to talk about the rest of it?
I really would love it, if you don't mind, to just hone in on Johari's window, which is, I think, a model that we'll share with you. But it's a model that I have used for years. It's old, but I'll tell you, it is just so impactful in terms of understanding how you see yourself and how others perceive you. One exercise that I have done with many teams that I've led is to actually put, this diagram up on a wall. Each person on the team has one, and each of us will go to the other's sheet, I'll call it, and actually write in what they know. So for instance, if I put this up on a wall for Simone, I will go to Simone's sheet and to write in a quadrant the things that I know about Simone that she may not know about herself. So those blind spots are those things that I know about Simone, and I know Simone knows and everybody else does, right? But it's always so interesting when at the end of that exercise, people go to their sheet and actually look at that blind spot, and they really are surprised at some of the feedback that they're hearing from their colleagues. And these are people that they've worked with sometimes for a very long time. But we really do have blind spots. So that 360 that PJ mentioned, or again, I love Johari window in terms of a way of capturing feedback in a constructive way. from those who know you?
I think this is a great start to developing your personal brand strategy, because you get a chance to understand how people see you versus how you see yourself.
I like that. So we are on time. Amazing how quickly 60 minutes can go by. I just want to thank everyone who joined us today. Susan, we can bring this slide down. I would like to encourage those of you who are on, we can take off the slides. Yeah, leave this one. Those who have joined us today and are still with us, to please get in touch with our amazing panelists. Simone, thank you so much for your insights and in really co-creating this. Ellen, PJ, thanks, my fellow alumni. I see you guys in the chat giving us a shout out. I really appreciate that. This has been a really critical conversation, but for those of you who are here, I want to tell you that this is part one of a larger conversation around branding. We have a part two to branding that will be happening at our annual conference. It's in September. So let's continue the conversation there. There's an amazing session that will walk you through kind of that hands-on approach of a lot of the things you've been hearing today. So for those of you who responded and told us you're thinking about it, you need to refresh your brand, you're looking for content, it's something you need to work on, please listen to this presentation later today when you have time, share it with others, and then join us at in September for an in-person session where you can really put the nuts and bolts together. I want to thank our esteemed panelists for the gift of their time and their talents. This has been an amazing hour that we've spent with you. Hopefully you can reach out to each one of us. We're all on LinkedIn. We're happy to continue the conversation. And thank you, PJ. Thank you, Simone. Thank you, Ellen. This has been amazing. Until next month, when we have another one of our amazing sessions, see you then and have a wonderful evening.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.